What's good, people? Addy here, Addy Ads, at a heel of YouTube. I want to talk today about a historical figure that has had a profound effect on my understanding of the world. And unlike, you never really know when some new information that is coming into your brain is going to affect you or not, or to what degree it will affect you. Whether that's a book, a magazine, an article, a movie, a documentary, whatever it may be. But I'm talking today about a man called Klaus Barbie. He was a Nazi officer in the SD. The SD was the intelligence agency of one of the two main intelligence agencies of Nazi Germany during World War II and during Nazi Germany's rule over Germany. The other was the Abwehr, which was eventually, I believe, absolved or co-opted by the SD because Hitler did not trust the head of the Abwehr, and for good reason, as he was a ideological defector from Nazism, and he was actually a very good man. Very unlike the head of the SD, Reinhard Heydrich, who was one of the most infamous Nazis of all time. The man with the Iron Heart, as Hitler called him. Many regard him as the darkest figure of the Nazi elite, even though he wasn't the oldest and he wasn't the most senior. But I'm talking today about Klaus Barbie. We can talk about Heydrich another time. He was, for, I believe, the most of the war, after the fall of France, he was the head of the SD in the town of Lyon, France. And as people who have an understanding of intelligence agencies may know, is that they torture people for information, right? And especially in the olden days, whereas now they use, I think, more subtle and subversive techniques when possible, but they all resort to torture at some point or another. And this man was especially cruel. He would partake in the tortures and interrogations himself, personally. He was as close to evil incarnate as perhaps I've ever read about a person. He definitely had a grotesque sense of enjoyment. I mean, he was a sadist by nature, it seems, and I think furthered by nurture as well. His enjoyment of torturing people, and it wasn't just men that he would torture. He would sexually torture men, women, and children, and eventually he earned the well-deserved nickname of the Butcher of Lyon. And he was, as I said, he was almost like the devil in human form. He's a very handsome man. Hitler's ideal Nazi, it seems. And I remember reading about him and just becoming so angry and so depressed. And I remember reading about him, and later that day I went to, my mom took my sister and myself out for lunch, or dinner rather, at a local taco place. And I didn't really say anything the whole meal. I just couldn't stop thinking about this man. Yeah, I still remember that meal. I don't think I'll ever forget it. And I think the reason that it affected me so much is the fact that not only did he get away with his crimes, but he almost got rewarded for them. And I say this because our government, the United States government, protected him after the war. You may ask why, and that's a great question. The reason is because, well, he was, of course, an expert in the dark arts of intelligence, right? And being a fascist, he was, by nature, a staunch anti-communist. And if you know anything about the U.S. government, the U.S. government has an intense fear of communism. You can see this in their placing despotic right-wing dictators throughout Central and South America over the 20th century to overthrow communist governments, right? Because of this domino theory. If you know about that, that was one of the motivations for going to war in Vietnam. It was this domino theory idea that once one country becomes communistic, the next one neighboring country will, and so on. Now, I'm not here to debate the validity of the domino theory, but the fact that our government protected him because he fought communism, I mean, to me just shows the amorality of power and how they saw him as a tool to be used, regardless of what he did in the past. And he also helped in Bolivia as well. The point is, he was protected by the U.S. and rewarded for his skill and his ability to use the dark arts to fight, whatever ideology he was paid to. And, I mean, he didn't really have a choice. He was either work for the U.S. government or die, right? Or be executed. But, I mean, it just made me think about the concept of karma. And I used to believe in karma. And I still use the word karma to describe things after the fact. I might say, well, Buddhists would call that karma. But just because I say that doesn't mean I believe that whatever instance I'm referring to is actually karma, or that I actually believe in karma. Because I think because of Klaus Barbie, I no longer believe in karma. And again, I wish I could believe in karma. I want to believe in karma because it gives you a sense of a feeling that there is justice in the world, a natural justice, that there is a sort of fairness in the world, even if it isn't immediately noticed. Now, he was eventually extradited to France, but by then he was an old man, and he was never remorseful, never repentant for what he did. And he ended up only spending about 4 years in jail before dying of some sort of health complication. I mean, basically just old age. I think he died in his late 80s or early 90s, so he was a very old man by the time he saw any sort of, legal punishment. And I certainly wouldn't say that 4 years of incarceration at the end of his life is justice for what he did. Not only to the French people during World War II, but the South American peoples as well. And the fact that our government protected him and paid him is, to me, just disgusting. And it's because of that I no longer believe in karma. And I think that's as simple as I can make it. But yeah, Klaus Barbie. He was a Nazi officer, SD, torture specialist. Worked first for the Nazi Germany, and then for the U.S. government against the communists in Europe. And then he worked for South American governments as well. Just goes to show, I think, that as long as you're useful to someone out there, and someone out there powerful entities, it really doesn't matter what kind of ethics or morals one may have. As long as you're still useful to these people, they don't really care. And that's why I no longer believe in karma. What do you guys think? Do you believe in karma? Let me know.